Broadcasting live from the BBQ Central Radio Network studios in Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the BBQ Central Radio Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
Welcome back. This portion of the show is being brought to you by cookinpellets.com, your number one source for quality wood pellets for all of your pellet-driven cookers. Visit cookinpellets.com for more information, or to purchase, you can also buy at amazon.com. Don't forget that Cookin' Pellets has their own app. Download it to your phone. I've been told that when Amazon decides to get a little hair up the ass and blow them out at crazy shipping prices, Cookin' Pellets app will alert you. So you can buy and save at the same time. A lot of people love to buy and save. Why not? I love to buy and save. Again, it's cookinpellets.com, or you can visit amazon.com. Rarely on the show do I use the terms barbecue and legend together. However, I make zero exceptions when I say barbecue legend now joining me, both on the cooking scene, but as you would go through the annals of history, the barbecue pit making scene. Let's go ahead and race over to the hotline and welcome back Dave Klose to the show. Dave, how are you, man?
Well, good evening. It's been a while since I talked to you.
I know, Dave, man. You are still building pits, son.
Well, who'd have thought that 38 years ago when I started this dang thing, I'd still be doing this?
That's the lead question, Dave, is, 30 plus years of building pits, whether it was, starting out and just kind of doing it in the garage and then ultimately forming the business and growing to what it is today. Did you think, 30 plus years ago that you would foresee being, in the midst of really a barbecue explosion of sorts?
Yeah, I actually chose it. I'd been a Boilermaker when I was a kid, building 200-ton standard pressure vessels, and went to the newspaper industry for about 15 years. And I took a serious look when I got out of that at the barbecue industry. And, somewhat 40 years ago, it was back in its infancy. And I realized with the meticulous nature I have for math skill and steel and creativity, I realized that I might be able to actually make a dent.
So what was the first cooker that you ever made, and was it something that was like did you keep the first cooker you ever made, or was that a commissioned operation?
No, I actually did. I had a buddy of mine that was helping me on and off, and one day he came in, and I was sitting there laying on the floor, laying next to a pit still dripping wet with paint. He goes, "Where'd you get that?" "I made it." And he said, "You don't know how to make pits?" I went, "I do now."
So do you? I
kept that for decades, and then I think we donated it to one of the high schools so they could auction it off for scholarship money.
Is it just a skill thing, or do you actually get down to drafting and drawing out and all that stuff, or is it just kind of a knock around and feel thing for you?
Well, originally, way back, we made every mistake probably 200 times. But even an idiot can learn if they pay attention. It appears to my meticulous nature and AutoCAD and drafting, engineering, things like that, because you get into some really unique situations when you're doing these semi-pits and the torpedoes and fire trucks and things like that. I actually got a hold of a 83 Seagrave fire truck that I want to cut up in my spare time and turn into a pit with TVs and lighted dance floors and all this stuff, and maybe trade it to one of the guys that owns the Rolls dealership for a used Silver Phantom Rolls Royce. And they said, "Well, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to tour?" I went, "No, I'm going to cut it up and make a barbecue pit out of it." I don't think that's ever been done, a Rolls Royce barbecue pit, and I've been dreaming about it over 30 years.
Dave Klose joining me here on the show. The website, by the way, if you've never been there, bbqpits.com, as simple as it sounds, bbqpits.com. Dave, let's talk about design of barbecue pits. When you hear Texas in general, and I know Houston and some of the other surrounding areas, that Texas traditional barbecue pit, it's steel, it's offset, you have the nice draft working, and then over the years, especially, let's say over the last 4 or 5 years, maybe 10, you've seen a lot of other style smokers become fashionable as well as the offsets, the cabinets, the insulated, pellet cookers, and all this other stuff. Why do you think the traditional offset, or as I call it, the Texas offset, continues to be something that guys want to put and girls want to put in their backyard and continue to be efficiently good cookers with?
Simplicity of design. I've always been a meat and potatoes man, and I want something that doesn't have any moving parts that can't break. I had a guy in Ohio call me a while back, and he said, well, Dave, I bought a pit that was a mobile pit that was like 10 years old, and the guy had it like 15 years, and then somebody before him, I think it's one of yours. And I said, well, does it have this? I said, look, is it dented anywhere on it? He said, yeah, all over. I said, it's not one of mine. I shot mine inside with a 44 Magnum. It didn't do anything. But, yeah, there's been a lot of change in the last 40 years. You got to remember, from my standpoint, 50 years ago, pits were gigantic diameter, super thick pipe. The firebox was ultra thin. The smokestacks were very small, 5 or 6 of them. And the reason for that was that was all the materials that the welders could steal off the inshore platforms. And through the years it started developing, we started reducing the footprint, on the pits, and learned how to thermal regulate them, by natural draft instead of a bunch of moving parts that are going to break, and servos and, motorized baffling and things like that. We learned how to make them cook and applied that to even the semi pits that you've seen. When you can get a 90-foot pit, get it 5 degrees left to right, top to bottom, that's draft, and understand the reignition of gases and so on. But the traditional people, they ingrained in their psyche, they still have this Old West foundry type mentality, which is great. And I kind of realized it when I did that North Dakota, Grand Forks, North Dakota flood disaster about 12 years ago. We were up there with that, 90-foot semi pit. And there was FEMA and the governor and mayor and hundreds of volunteers and things like that. But what was interesting was I was the cook on the pit, and everybody came to me with their problems and questions. Everybody. And when I got back, I researched that, and I researched the old cattle drives, and I came to find out something. The trail boss was not the boss. He just ran the cows. The cook was the head of everything. He was the banker, arbitrage, the medic, the cook. And I think people just naturally harbor toward that, philosophy when they go to the cook at a cook-off or things like that, to just get right at it, And I went, wow, that's pretty amazing. I didn't know that.
When you look at a traditional offset, like a Klose pit or some of the other ones, there almost seems to be two styles at this point. You have, I guess, what I would call like the normal draft. So you have the firebox, if we're looking at it on the right, the cooking chamber, and then the stack opposite on the cooking chamber. So you get that kind of right to left draft, if you will. And then you also have some other models that are called like the reverse flow or whatever they're called. And you have stack, which would be the same side as the firebox. Have you ever messed around with that? Obviously, Klose are traditionally, the right to left draft, if you will. But have you toyed around with reverse flows and all that other stuff at some point?
Yeah, 40 years ago. Well, it's left side, right side is immaterial. Generally, they're built right, hand firebox, because God's over your right shoulder, devil over your left. But we make them either way, depending on the draft of the arena, of where it's going, against the wall, whether it's in Amarillo, where there's a 50-mile-an-hour wind. We've got them in 28 countries, so we know how they perform at 50 below zero. But about 40 years ago, I did that, the reverse flow, and then years later, I split up the plates into individual 6 or 8 of them, and then years after that, we changed the thickness on them, and then a few years after that, we started messing with the Burnell, Steel plate comes in 2,200 grades of Burnell. It's carbon content. And the higher the carbon, the denser the plate, like T-target silhouette sawn. And once we started playing with that, getting a pit within 60 degrees is not that difficult. But it's that last 60 degrees that can be rough. And to get it, it's meticulous. And even people, it's funny, they ask me, well, how do you tune a pit? And I said, the same way you tune a fish. They said, well, give me the layman's terms. I said, well, look, you're dealing with ambient radiant temperature, aerothermal, hydrodynamic field, and magnetic shield, and holistic aura, barometric, and altitude. By what country? They went, that's the layman's terms?
I was just going to say the same thing.
Went, you don't need to know. I can't make a car piston. Can you?
No.
I know how they work. But I can't make one. Well, that's me in pits and draft. I could pass a propane tank 200 yards on the other side of the freeway on Saturday at 8 o'clock in the morning in Arkansas, and I can tell you how hot it is, how long it's been lit, what kind of wood he's got in it, just from the color of the smoke. Because I've sat there every day for 40 years studying it. It's amazing what you can see, and they don't even need thermometers. 40, 50 years ago, you put your hand on the pit, and if you could hold it only 3.5 seconds, that was 325 degrees. It's the old cast iron pot cooking stuff, double Dutch oven, so on. But yeah, we started developing it, shortening the footprint. We reduced the footprint in the last 40 years probably by about 3/4, and learned how to stack shelving and regulate draft where people could get these things. A lot of them, we do, pretty much a full spread of backyard. They can be round pipe, square, round vertical, octagon, rectangular, articulating shelving. But we also do the indoor commercial pits, the big ones. I kind of get a kick when the real big indoor pit people go, hey, if you want a pit that holds over 1,500 pounds, there's only one guy that knows how to make it where it'll cook, because we've done those gigantic ones and learned how to regulate them, which is not so easy, but it's funny, the bigger the pit is, the more fun it is to cook on, especially in competition or backyard. I learned that the hard way. A guy had actually embarrassed me decades ago, and he goes, well, what do you got at home in your backyard? And back then I was working 720s, and I went, mechanic's car. Son, I said, it's bad. He said, how bad? I said, it's bad. He said, $20 bullet? I went, nope, I got a borrowed one. He went, Klose, you cheap son of a gun. He said, you didn't even spend $20 on a barbecue pit? It embarrassed me so bad I brought 3 or 4 of them home. I went, he's right. I should have some decent equipment at home. You just hate to take it away from the public just to take it home for yourself. But we do a lot of experimentation. I've been making rub for almost 40 years. Oh, hey, I just sold my first 4 cases overseas to Europe today. That's the first time I've had an overseas order.
Are you surprised, Dave, not to sidetrack here off of, your domestic business, but you've kind of been a visionary and a foreseer of how popular barbecue is going to be here over the last, couple of decades. Are you surprised to see how much the European countries have picked up their love and interest and almost fanaticism for barbecue in all facets?
Well, I was an honorary ambassador through the UN for 2 years. We actually cooked in Europe about 6-8 years on and off, and I was a recruitment director for the World Barbecue Association. So I think the main reason for that was that I could call people from America at 3 o'clock in the morning, because there's a 7 to 9 hour time difference. Yeah. And I could convince the countries to come over here. We were actually the first international team in America at Jack Daniels. And all my friends came to me and they said, hey, Dave, I heard there's the Irish world champions here. I went, yeah. He said, do you know him? I went, yeah, it's me. He went, what? No, you're from Texas and your friend's from Washington State. I went, yeah, we went over to Ireland and won it. And we continued to cook over there. Most of the time, though, you're dealing with the Iron Chefs or 5-star executive chefs in the restaurants, because they want to learn. And then it trickles down into the events management planning people that can put on cook-offs. We did that one in Lisdoonvarna, Ireland, and it was actually a 800-year-old matchmaking festival. And Willie Daly's the matchmaker, and he can he'll watch them dance. If you go in his book that you want to get married, he will watch people dance and pick the two that should be married. His accuracy rate is for 52 years is 98%.
Really?
Yeah, the guy's got a gift for picking the right people, and we did a cook-off over there for a month, and just absolutely amazing, to see. And the fun part, I think, is turning people on to something new that hasn't seen it. That's probably the greatest reward, is in showing, hey, check this out. You got to remember, brisket, fajita, those were thrown in the trash 35 years ago.
Right.
They were thrown away. And we had to learn from Mexico how to tenderize the meat. Now it's $9 a pound. But fortunately, the rains have come back quite a bit. We had a nice 5-year drought in a lot of the breadbasket of America, and they raised the feed prices and hay prices way up. But now with all the rains, it's coming back down. So I think we're going to get a little ease on the price of beef and whatnot. So that's a plus to the weathers.
Dave, from a business standpoint, is it still almost 90% custom pits by the time people are done with their orders, or do you have any stock stuff that you're selling off? How does that run for you guys right now?
It changes radically from hour to hour. That's actually what I call dailies, like America, because the backyard pits and stuff like that changes by the hour.
Yeah.
I don't actually keep track of that. My girls at the office do. I'm more into overseas and high-density yield cubits and international law and trade agreements. I actually built a pit for Prince of Monaco, Grace Kelly's nephew.
Nice.
That was pretty cool. I cooked with the Norwegian government for 15 years at Memphis in May, and Craig is an Oklahoma boy that wound up chasing a skirt back to Norway 40 years ago. He even brought over the Denmark team sponsored by the government. And I tell you, there ain't nothing finer in this world than to have 20 5-star chefs at your beck and call. I was showing strangers at Memphis, and I said, check this out. I don't know, I think a 10-kilo halibut with dill sauce, bang, 7 minutes. Barbecue ice cream, bang, 4 minutes. I'm like, this is great.
Easily spoiled, right?
Oh, yeah, people have asked me that my whole life. Well, how come you're not out at the cook-offs always winning? I said, because I'm surrounded by professional chefs all the time. Why would I want to cook? Even Paul Kirk, 7-time world champion. We'd be at an event, and they went, well, how do you get to do things like this? And I said, check this out. And I had somebody had loaned us a Weber kettle. I went, Paul, is this a good pit? And he just pushed everybody out of the way and said, bring the hand trucks up with the cases of meat. And he cooked till all the meat was gone. And I went, yeah, it's easy. A good cook only has one speed, wide open. They'll cook till there's nothing left to cook, Paul taught me a lot through the years. I was actually his protege for 7 years without even realizing it. I didn't notice it for a long time that when I asked him a question, he was telling me everything he knew about food science, chemistry, things like that. And after a while, I realized, my God, he's telling me everything because he knows I'll pass it on. And that's the way it should be done. Now, there's no real secrets because it's all timing. In competition, it's the same thing, You got to look at the area. He taught me a lot. He's in Kansas City. I'm in Texas. And he says, all right, we're going to New York tomorrow. You made the rub? I went, yeah. He went, wrong. You make it when you get there. I said, why is that? He said, you listen to your body. If it's hot up there, your body wants salt. If it's cold, your body wants chili powder. Stick your finger in it. And once I threw away all the thousands of cookbooks and started doing that, quality of my cooking went up 500% almost immediately. If it's salty, add sugar. Oh, and it can't be that simple. They said, yeah, it really is. Simple works, and it wins competitions too. You'll see some of the biggest competitions in the world are won by beginners that have never cooked there or cooked in competition in their life. And then you get buddies like Mike Wells here in Houston, just won the Houston Rodeo Barbecue. That's a big deal. You know, that's 550, 600 teams. He cooks on our pits, but Mike's an incredible cook. He's been a hell of a cook for 30 years. Yeah, he was a Bulldog Mountain cooking crew, and to win the rodeo was just gigantic, you know, because that's some of the best cooks in the country. But oddly enough, it's not the people going to the competition that are the best. It's the people in their backyard you never hear of. Those are the ones that are really good. You just never see them.
Dave, in regards to your, lead time, are you out a ways? Are you fairly fluid in that? Is that something that also changes like hour by hour? What's that like?
No, we've been on full production for 38 years. I got 2 factories 2 blocks apart. We've been expanding constantly through the decades, and we're in the mills. You know, the steel and pipe and plate we buy they never touch ground. They came straight out of the mills. That's not something I had planned. 35 years ago, my pipe and plate salesmen are now presidents of the mills in America. And they started giving us a break when we started buying into 1 million pound quantities and stuff. So turnaround, pretty good. Backyards, we carry probably 5 or 10 in stock all the time. And then turn around on a oddball, something with special stuff on it or built into stone face tile set, things like that. Those can go about 4 weeks. We even have some mobile pits in stock, which is unheard of. Nobody stocks mobile pits because somebody always wants something different on it. But I've got some 36 by 10 foot main can trailer pits with all the toys on them, just sitting there brand new, waiting. Because these restaurateurs, they want something that'll do 300, 500 plates at a time. They can just, give me a call and I'll ship it up to them the next day. And we do a lot of hotels and big restaurant chains. We've been building for Louis Mueller, Style Switch, Killens, Stubbs, all these guys for decades. Ninfas, Pappas, Dixon Brothers. So we ship them out quite a bit.
Dave, are you still answering the phone when people call?
Oh, constantly. Absolutely. Yeah, I probably do. I probably sell more pits after 10 o'clock at night than the factory does during the entire day. Yeah. You call California to midnight, flip over to Europe 9 hours later, back to Hawaii 14 hours earlier, and then down to Australia a day and a half before you left. That's a weird part.
Well, from personal experience, I think there's been at least a good handful of times I've called you probably after 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and I remember the first time you were on the show, you're like, hey, if you ever have any questions, just call me. I answer the phone. And I was like, yeah, right. And, man, sure as shit, the next time I called you up, it was probably like 11:30 at night, and you're like, Close Pits? And I was like, this is Dave. And he's like, yeah, who do you think was going to answer the phone? And, we're talking for 45
this time of night. Yeah. What's that, triple time?
Yeah, right. I mean, you're triple time, no doubt about it. So if you need any information, bbqpits.com is the website, and we're talking with Dave Klose, barbecue legend. Dave, always appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
All right, brother. Take care.
All right. There he is, Dave Klose. What?